Right, folks, I'm hoping that the screen will be filled now with an image of Cairngorms Connect, and Alison, tell me if it isn't. And thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you this evening. Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to tell you a bit about Cairngorms Connect. I've got roughly 15 minutes to do it. At the moment, it's not advancing in the way that it should do. Right, that's worked now. Hopefully it's not going to skip ahead too. So, folks, Cairngorms Connect is the biggest habitat restoration project in the UK. I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. And for those of you who maybe know the area, you can picture it there, the dark green area within the Cairngorms National Park. And the area is managed by 4 individual partners. The big blue blob that you can see there, that's managed by Wildland Limited. That's Anders Poulsen, the biggest biggest landowner in Scotland. And that's about 50% of the project area. About 25% of the project area is managed by the RSPB, and that includes the Abernethy Nature Reserve, which is that blob in the top, the northeast corner. And then the Inch Marshes area, which is down near Kingusie, the Inch Marshes Reserve. And then the other 25% is managed by Forestry and Land Scotland and Nature Scot, as was Scottish Natural Heritage. So together, those 4 land managers are managing the entirety of this project area. It's about 15% of the national park area. You can see within the context of Scotland there, it's a big area. It's 600 square kilometres, 60,000 hectares. In old money, it's about 230 square miles, so it's huge. The other partner there is a non-land managing partner, a kind of supporting partner. That's the Cairngorms National Park Authority. So they're part of the Cairngorms Connect board and help guide the work that we do. So let's hope this advances easily. It's taking a wee while. I just wanted to very briefly touch on the 10 attributes of a restoration project, why it is that Cairngorms Connect in particular is a really important restoration project. There are these partnership attributes to start with. So having only 4 land managing partners makes decision making much easier. It makes it very easy and quick for us to come up with strategies for managing the work, to work collaboratively and to work across boundaries. The partners have a 200-year shared vision, which is quite something, but when you see some of the things that we're trying to do, you'll be able to see why it takes 200 years, a 200-year vision to achieve it. And another important thing is that the partners have a fairly decent record. Some of them have been managing land and undertaking restoration work in this area for 70+ years. And that really counts for something. And when you think of it in those terms, perhaps a 200-year vision doesn't seem like such a big stretch. There are then these physical attributes. So, as I said, the scale is enormous, 60,000 hectares. The next thing, which anybody with any ecological background will know is important, is not just the scale, but the fact that it is connected. It's contiguous. You can walk from the southern end to the northern end without crossing much more than a road, really. And when you're looking at managing land for biodiversity, for wildlife, that's really quite important. The next one there is that it's a single catchment. So the entire hydrological system within the project area, within the partnership area, is within the Spey catchment, the second largest river in Scotland, and it constitutes about 20% of the Spey catchment. So then when we start to talk about some of the benefits, some of the ecosystem service benefits that come from the work that we do, and I'll touch on that later, doing it all within one single catchment can make a difference. It's got an amazing altitudinal range. So it goes from 200 meters above sea level to 1,309 meters above sea level. That's a huge range of altitude, and that's a real attribute for physically, but it then confers real quality in terms of ecological attributes. It means we get fantastic habitat diversity, and there is some really great quality habitats here. We've got the biggest remnants of ancient Caledonian pinewood, the largest expanse of subalpine plateau in Britain, and so on. It really is a very special place. There's also the species diversity and rarity that goes with that. So there are over 5,000 recorded species, and of those, around 20% are nationally rare or scarce. So that's pretty impressive by any measure. And just to give you a couple of examples, we have 11 species of regularly breeding raptors, and this is a landscape, 60,000 hectares, free of persecution. So to have species like this, white-tailed eagle breeding, along with others, is really an impressive thing to have. And in 2016, we had 50% of the national population of capercaillie were in forests managed by the Cairngorms Connect partners. So that gives you a sense of the species diversity and rarity. And then the final one is that despite it being very good in the way that I've described it, there is still large-scale restoration potential, and that's what I'm going to go on to talk about now. Obviously, I haven't got a huge amount of time. Just to give you a quick overview, we could broadly describe what we do in 4 general work areas. One is forests, and that's the one I'm going to concentrate on today. Secondly is peatland restoration, a big part of our project, over 10,000 hectares of peatland, of peat-rich habitats within the partnership area. And then rivers and floodplains, a huge program of river and floodplain restoration work. And then the final one is all about people, really, and I'll touch on this later, the importance of the area to people, whether they live here or they visit here or they have businesses here. So those are the kind of 4 key areas. But as I've said, I'm going to concentrate on the forests. It's a fairly complex mix of different forest types, but there's around about 4,700 hectares of remnant Caledonian pinewood. This is Abernethy, the biggest remnant of Caledonian pinewood left in Scotland. But some of the other big remnants, Rothiemurchus, Glenmore, Glenfeshie, are within the partnership area as well. And we add to that around 7,800 hectares of plantation. Most of that is Scots pine plantation. So with it comes, we're very fortunate with Scots pine in that we still end up with a lot of the pinewood biodiversity associated with plantations that we might expect in some of the older forests, albeit maybe not in such good density or quality, but I'll come on to talk about that. And then within that, we have a matrix of these spectacular bog woodlands peppered through the pinewood, really ancient bogs with very stunted pines growing through. So you get the sense of a really intricate matrix of species. And this is one image that perhaps shows that quite nicely. On the left, you can see a mix of mostly a mix of Caledonian pinewood remnant and plantation, some plantation Scots pine in the background there. Then an area of bog woodland. You can see that in that strip up the centre. And then the right-hand side, the area that's been cleared, that is lodgepole pine that's been clear felled. And that gives you an example of the other type of woodland, which is non-natives, which we have scattered through the project area. And for those of you who know the area, this is the bottom end of Loch Morlich, and that's the track that you can see in the background going up to Rothiemurchus Lodge. So if that helps to orientate you. So talking about some of the management of the forests, there are a few different individual projects that I'll talk about. And one of the most challenging ones from a biodiversity point of view is non-native conifers. There are stands of mature conifers, lodgepole pine, Norway spruce, Sitka spruce, and there is a program to remove those. And you can see that here that's been removed in a commercial way, so timber's been taken away, and those areas will now be left to regenerate or will be planted with Scots pine coming back and a mix of other native species as well. So the intention here is to remove those non-natives. And on the right, you can see non-native regeneration, lodgepole pine and spruce scattered within a Scots pine plantation, a much more challenging stand of trees to remove this regeneration, which is scattered through the stand. So that's quite a big challenge for us. But so far in the last 2 years, 709 hectares have been cleared of non-native conifers. I mentioned the value of these Scots pine plantations that we have for biodiversity, and they can be improved by restructuring them, by creating more space, more light, favouring invertebrates, favouring blaeberry, and so on. And some of that is done commercially or semi-commercially, but there's also a programme of work, and you see the LinkedIn page there of Alban Tom, a local contractor who fails to recycle for the project. So pulling over trees, felling trees, and then that is left as dead wood to benefit fungi and other biodiversity. And so that's peppered again right through the project area. So again, the last couple of years, 664 hectares of plantation restructuring. Probably the most ambitious project is expansion of the forest to its natural limit. This is a map produced by the Cairngorms National Park Authority. You can see the shape of the Cairngorms Connect area there in black. The green areas are existing forest. The blue areas, the two shades of blue, are potential new additional forest. And then that kind of pinkish color is where we might see high altitude montane woodland. And the white is areas of extensive bog or high altitude rocky habitat that would be unlikely to develop woodland. So when we look at what that means within the 200-year vision, around 30,000 hectares of new forest, of additional forest. So that's on top of the 13,000 hectares of forest we currently have. And in addition to that, at around about 900 meters above sea level, we expect around 5,300 hectares of high altitude montane woodland. I'll say a bit more about the challenges around that too. So how are we going to achieve that? Well, the most significant way of doing that, when we're doing it without fencing, because of many of you will be aware of the risk of bird strikes like capercaillie on fences. So the whole area is being managed through a collaborative deer control program across 60,000 hectares, including some staff who have license to operate across the boundaries of the different owners. And when we look at what that means, these two images are from Glenfeshie, courtesy of Wildland Limited. You can see many of you will know Glenfeshie in its former condition, 2003, when there were perhaps 25 or so deer per square kilometre. And then in 2020, just last autumn, you can see in the same view how much the trees have recovered, and that's probably with deer down to 2, maybe 3 deer per square kilometre. And that pattern of recovery of forests through natural regeneration is something that we're seeing across the project area, across the partnership area. This left-hand picture again is the top end of Glenfeshie, and that right-hand image is on Abernethy, looking up to the Febui, to the Shelterstone Crag, and there we're seeing Scots pine starting to develop at probably 700 meters or probably even 800 meters above sea level. So that's what we're looking to achieve by natural regeneration. And you can see these two images at the top. That's Raverne Pass with Millevuckel on the left, and in the snow you can see the regeneration reaching up. Millevuckel's about 811 meters above sea level, so you can see the trees doing very well, and you can see that 450 meter contour. The lower image is on Guyk Estate, part of Wildland Limited, and there you can see that there is very little by way of seed source trees. So here there's a big program of tree planting underway, and in 2019 and 2020, 1,000 hectares of new planting has been done to establish seed sources so that natural regeneration can progress from there. For some species, particularly these montane willows, we are at very, very low numbers. So this is the tree nursery at the RSPB's Abernethy Reserve. And here we've taken cuttings from those handful of trees up in the mountains and grown them on. And this summer, 1,000 young willows will be planted out up around Lochan to try and rejuvenate that population, which is currently a handful of plants really, which really won't be successful in spreading further because they're so low in number and the genetic diversity is so poor. Of course, we look at these places and we think, well, they're fantastic for wildlife, they're amazing forests, great ambition to expand them, but these are also important places for people too, whether it's for recreation, whether it's as a place to work, whether it's something that's important to local communities, businesses, local culture, and recreation. And we're very mindful of that, and that's a big part of the work program that we have. There's a couple of examples of some of the artwork that we've been involved with. There's an image there of the Uathlochans, and we'll be producing 4 of these images showing a stylized picture of the area, and then we'll be making those available to people. They're quite striking views. Some of them will be familiar to you. And then Hamish Napier, some of you will know, a very popular Scottish folk museum, and we sponsored Hamish's The Woods album, which came out last year, which celebrates the diversity of trees and forests in the Strathspey area. And we now have an Endangered Landscapes Artists Residency project underway, and you'll be able to hear more about that in the months to come. I'm running out of time a bit, so very quickly, we do have a significant monitoring program, ecological indicators, ecosystem service indicators, and societal benefits. I can make these slides available in a PDF at the end if anybody's interested, but the green indicators there and the ones where we're testing particular interventions are all based in woodland habitats. And very quickly on the carbon side, again, this map's now becoming familiar. You can see this is the importance of the area in carbon, tonnes per hectare. We're already very important in terms of woodland and in terms of peatlands. And the work that we've got planned over this current 5-year work programme area will all help to help us move towards net zero by either reducing carbon emissions or increasing carbon sequestration by repairing damaged bogs, expanding woodland, reducing deer numbers, and so on. So it's a major part of our work programme. And in doing that, we also are providing adaptation for likely effects of climate change by slowing water, by cooling water, by having more vegetation growth, which increases uptake of water, slowing movement of the water through restored floodplains, and even expanding the forest gives us better altitudinal range, which means that we've got opportunities for species to move into new climate envelopes as climate change has an effect on us all, but on the species in particular. Very quickly now, finally, the project benefits from Endangered Landscapes Programme funding. We're one of 8 projects that's benefited from this across Europe, $5 million to fund the sort of work that I've been talking about, but also we benefit from money from Scottish Forestry and Peatland Action Fund as well. We're in the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration, which I'm sure you'll all be aware of, and we intend to do our best to make a contribution in the decade ahead. I'll leave it there and be interested to hear your questions. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jem. And very, very much on time as well.